Did you notice what just happened? A vote just took place in Washington that sounded extremely explosive at first, but then quietly ended with almost no impact. An impeachment resolution aimed at Donald Trump reached the House floor, and instead of sparking a political firestorm, it was blocked by a huge majority. It wasn't delayed, it wasn't stretched out, it was shut down quickly and decisively, and that response, or really the lack of any reaction, is the real story here. Because when something as dramatic and serious as impeachment barely gets attention, it tells you a lot about where the political mood in the country actually stands right now. Not where social media says it is, not where the loudest voices want it to be, but where the real power centers in Washington actually stand. Let's begin with something many people miss. This vote was never about removing Trump right away. It was a test, a political temperature check, a way to see who is willing to take that step and who clearly is not. The resolution was brought forward by House Democrats who believe Trump's overall behavior still deserves impeachment-level review. The wording was strong, the claims were serious. Abuse of power, ignoring Congress, language meant to force a moment of decision, and then the House moved to block it, by a huge margin. That alone tells us something important. Whatever frustration toward Trump still exists in Congress, there is very little desire to reopen impeachment as a political weapon, even among Democrats, especially those focused on governing, elections, and voter exhaustion at the same time. Here's what many people get wrong. Blocking an impeachment vote does not mean Trump suddenly has total political protection. What it does mean is that lawmakers on both sides are making a careful calculation, and that calculation is simple. Right now, impeachment costs more than it delivers. From what I've observed, many Democrats privately feel impeachment has become politically toxic. Trump has already been impeached twice before. Each time it took over the news, energized his supporters, drained undecided voters, and ultimately failed to remove him. There is real concern about repeating that cycle again, with even fewer political returns than before. So when the House moved to shut this resolution down, it revealed something deeper than just a procedural decision. It revealed a party struggling with strategy, not morality, with timing, not outrage. And that's where the situation becomes more interesting. Because even though impeachment was stopped, the pressure surrounding Trump hasn't vanished. It has changed direction. Instead of loud, dramatic actions, what many political analysts say we're now seeing is a quieter kind of resistance, slower, more procedural, less flashy in headlines, but potentially more effective over time. For instance, look at how nominations and legislative priorities have been handled in recent months. Observers note that lawmakers, including Republicans, have been far less willing to quickly move controversial Trump-aligned proposals through the system. Support is no longer guaranteed. Loyalty is no longer assumed. It's a subtle shift, but an important one. In my opinion, this is how political power usually weakens, not through one major collapse, but through small moments of hesitation. A vote delayed here, a nomination stalled there, a party leader choosing silence instead of stepping in to defend. Most people don't notice this, but the real power of a president or any dominant political figure comes from momentum, the feeling that everyone else has decided it's easier to go along than to push back. Once that feeling starts to fade, even slightly, everything becomes more difficult, and Trump, for the first time in quite a while, seems to be running into that resistance. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean Trump is finished, not even close. He still commands huge attention, he still drives the conversation, he still has a loyal base that sees any criticism as proof of persecution. But here's the twist. Inside Washington, attention and real control are not the same thing. A politician can dominate headlines and still struggle to actually move the system. That's why this blocked impeachment vote matters more than it appears on the surface. It wasn't a celebration, it was a message. Lawmakers were essentially saying, we're not doing this again, not in this way. At the same time, they were quietly holding on to their own leverage. Some political analysts describe it as keeping a tool on the shelf, not because they plan to use it immediately, but because they want everyone to see it's still there. Impeachment doesn't vanish just because it stopped once. It stays part of the constitutional framework lingering in the background, and that creates pressure. Trump knows it, his allies know it, his critics certainly know it. You can hear it in the tone of his public remarks. More aggressive, more defensive, more focused on loyalty. That usually happens when someone feels their support is no longer guaranteed. And here's why that's important. In American politics, presidents don't fall because of one scandal or one single vote. They fall when people on their own side start doing quiet calculations. When lawmakers begin asking themselves, is defending this person helping me or hurting me? That question is being asked more openly now than it was before, and it's not only Democrats raising it. Multiple reports point to growing chatter among Republicans who are simply worn out by constant conflict, worn out by having to explain chaos to voters, worn out by feeling like every news cycle is an emergency. They may never say this publicly, most of them won't, but behind closed doors that exhaustion changes how they act. Votes become more careful, statements become shorter, energy fades. That's how influence slowly slips away. Another point that rarely gets enough focus is how the meaning of impeachment itself has shifted. Years ago, it was seen as a final constitutional emergency. Today, after several high-profile attempts across different administrations, it carries a very different weight. Some lawmakers worry it has lost its ability to shock. That's one major reason many Democrats seem hesitant to pull that lever again without overwhelming justification. They don't want impeachment to appear symbolic or performative. They want it to feel unavoidable. And right now, they don't believe those conditions exist. So instead, we're watching a different strategy take shape. Oversight, delays, public pressure, and allowing internal party dynamics to do part of the work. Strategically speaking, it's colder, less dramatic, but possibly more effective. Now, some Trump supporters argue this entire narrative is exaggerated. They correctly point out that the House blocking impeachment shows he still doesn't face enough votes against him. They see it as proof that the so-called establishment can't touch him. That view exists, and it isn't unreasonable. But here's the counterpoint many analysts make. The vote didn't demonstrate overwhelming support for Trump. It showed overwhelming reluctance to repeat a political strategy that has failed before. Those are very different conclusions. If anything, the vote exposed fatigue, and fatigue is dangerous for anyone who thrives on constant confrontation. This is where the discussion becomes more nuanced. Trump's influence isn't collapsing, it's changing form. Less commanding, more reactive, less about driving outcomes, and more about responding to resistance. You can see it in how often the focus turns to grievances, loyalty tests, and past battles rather than future plans. That's usually a signal that momentum has slowed. So where does that leave us? It places us in an unusual in-between moment. Trump remains central to American politics, but no longer untouchable. Impeachment is still technically available, but politically sidelined. Congress feels frustrated, yet cautious, and both parties are quietly positioning for what comes next. Not removal, not vindication, transition. Whether that transition leads to renewed dominance or gradual decline remains an open question. Politics has a habit of flipping expectations overnight. But one thing is clear, this vote was never just about impeachment. It was about appetite, about fatigue, about how much chaos lawmakers and voters are willing to tolerate. And right now, the answer appears to be not much more. That's the message hidden inside this quiet, overwhelming vote. If you found this breakdown useful, consider subscribing. I appreciate you. Let's dive into what's brewing in the political world today. And honestly, it feels like we're in the midst of something truly historic. We've got a Democratic congressman from California, Eric Swalwell, facing a Justice Department investigation. Ironically, this news dropped on the same day that lawyers for a couple of Trump's other critics were in court trying to get their criminal charges tossed out. So here's the scoop. A Trump administration housing official is leveling some serious allegations against Swalwell, claiming he might have committed fraud while securing a mortgage in Washington, D.C.